Welcome to the Jewish Education Experience podcast with your hosts, Yasmina and Ari, who will be uncovering gems of wisdom with Jewish educators from around the world.
To our audience, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support, and we appreciate you sharing our podcast with others also. Please consider supporting our podcast financially by contributing via Zelle, jewisheducationpodcast@gmail.com, or by joining our Patreon community, www.patreon.com/Jewish Education Experience Podcast. And to all of you Jewish educators and students of Jewish education around the world, chizchu ve'imtzu. May you be strengthened and encouraged in your holy endeavors.
Our guest today is Joanna Powers, and she lives in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where she is the director of Hebrew and Judaics at the Jewish Day School of the Lehigh Valley, which is a school that runs from pre-K up until 8th grade. That is where she began her teaching career back in 1997, and we'll go on and she can tell us a little bit more about her background. But Joanna, we're very excited. Welcome to the podcast, and we're very thankful that you're able to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a real treat. I'm very excited. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Well, we're excited to learn from you. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and just how you began your educational journey?
Absolutely, sure. I grew up in Queens, New York, in an area called Kew Gardens Hills, and I attended Yeshiva Elementary School and high school. But then I transferred over to Queens College, where I majored in education and English. It's also where I met my husband, Jonathan. And my intention was always to be a teacher for the most part. There was a brief time in high school when it seemed like all the girls in my class were going to be physical therapists or occupational therapists. So I looked into that a little bit, and the intensive science and math coursework had me steering my way back to elementary and early childhood education, and I'm glad I did, because I think it was really where I belong. So I got married shortly after I graduated from Queens College with degrees in elementary and early childhood education as well as English. And we moved to Allentown. I had lived in New York my entire life. I really hadn't gone much of anywhere. I was a real city person. But my husband grew up where you are now, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And luckily I was able to meet him because he attended Queens College. And, we looked for areas really more for his job. He was looking for a position in kosher food service, supervision, and he found a position in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We used to have a restaurant, and he was hired to be the manager and mashgiach there. I had every intention to find a public school teaching position. I had my degrees, I had my New York City reciprocal teaching license that worked in Pennsylvania as well. I was already looking into which graduate schools I'd be going to while I started my teaching career. And then I ended up walking into the Jewish Day School of the Lehigh Valley, and I was hooked. It was such a wonderful place. The principal at the time, and as you mentioned, this is going pretty far back. This is 1997. But the principal at the time was so welcoming. It was such a family atmosphere. And there's just something about teaching Jewish children Torah and mitzvot that just can't be replicated elsewhere. With the exception of a few years that we had ended up in New Jersey. It's a whole nother story, sort of in the middle, but sometime between 97 and now, where I actually taught at two Solomon Schechters. We had returned to Allentown, and we really never looked back. I've taught pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, mostly Hebrew and Judaic studies. And then 5 years ago, we hired our current incredible head of school, Amy Golding, and she promoted me to become the director of Hebrew and Judaics for the whole school, for pre-K through 8th grade. However, as much as I enjoy my administrative position, I have not let go of teaching. My schedule is full of once or twice a week Judaics classes with 3rd through 7th grades. I teach one period of early childhood 5 days a week because I can't leave those little guys. And as busy as running my department makes me, I can't imagine not being in the classroom regularly. The only other thing I'll tell you is that my husband runs and supervises the kosher program at Muhlenberg College. And I have 2 big sons who attended our Jewish day school from pre-K through 8th grade. And the benefits of going to a community day school are still being reaped by both of them. One is in high school and one's in college. And really their biggest adjustment after leaving the JDS was going to a school where neither of their parents were employed. So that's pretty much my journey in a nutshell.
Wow. Sounds, you're quite the professional, it seems.
Thank you.
So are there any educators that you particularly admire from your past?
So I've worked with so many incredible teachers, and one of the amazing things about the Jewish Day School is that we have been incredibly fortunate to gather a fantastic general studies staff. And these are all people that could be teaching in a public school for, a much different salary with much different benefits. And yet they stay, because they just love the atmosphere and they're just loyal. So there are teachers that with whom I've been teaching for many years that just amaze me every day. But the one woman who I thought of when I think of educators that I admire and modeled myself after, we go back to 1997 one more time. And when I started there, I taught kindergarten alongside Sheila Greenberg, Zichrono Livracha. I was a brand new teacher. She had already been teaching at the day school for over 30 years. And at that point was known to multiple generations of children as Mora Sima. In fact, she was very insistent that just about all the teachers be called by their Hebrew names. So my first several years, I was actually known as Mora Yanina, as opposed to my current moniker of Mora Joanna. But Sheila was my mentor, and she was my guide into the world of Jewish early childhood education. I learned how to relate to children on their level, how to meet their needs directly. And she really was ahead of her time in best practices. Mora Sima respected and valued children as people long before it was popular. When she finally retired, she had taught at our school for 42 years. Unfortunately, she's since passed away, but I think about her daily. I keep her personalized pointer in my office. It's a wooden painted pointer with an apple and bubble letters that say Mora Sima's pointer. And every so often a student will notice it and ask me about it. And I'm always happy to tell them a little about Mora Sima. She really put me on track to arrive where I am today, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, so I know, obviously you have, you're a professional administrator, also a professional teacher. So I guess answer this question either from whichever perspective you want or both, but are there, how do you talk about God and how might this differ with the different age groups that you teach?
So, like I said, I do currently teach multiple age groups, but I have sort of a similar approach across the board. The majority of my career really has been in early childhood, and I sort of created a little bit of an outlook on how to deal with the youngest children. And from the youngest class, we reference Hashem. We reference God. I'll mention the concept or the word God, but we usually use the term Hashem. And when we're talking to 3, 4, 5-year-olds, even a little bit older, I'll tell the youngest students that Hashem is someone who made the world and the people and the animals, and someone who takes care, and of course, they're not going to necessarily understand the concept of a deity or that it's not really a person. So it has to be a little bit on their level to relate to, but really a force that takes care of us every day. And I relate prayers and brachot to opportunities to thank Hashem for all we have and ask for what we need. By the time the students reach older grades, Hashem is an accepted part of our language and at least the beliefs of the school. I have had students who question God to me, and I really try to keep my responses simple. I tell them that, I say that at the JDS, we do teach that there is a God who's in charge and involved in our lives. And while the world can be seen through a lens that makes this almost obvious, you think of the beauty of nature, the birth of a baby, the continued existence of tiny Israel, it's understood that one could explain that all through science and circumstance. I have never told a child that his beliefs or lack thereof are wrong. I have said that the world is a more comforting place when you feel that it is not random and unplanned. Right. So we just start them very young with this idea that there is a force that is involved in their lives. It's a good feeling to know that someone is watching out, something is watching out and protecting us. And as the kids grow, and especially for kids who that might not be part of their their family background, it's offered to them, but they're never criticized for their beliefs or their perspective.
Well, that's really important because you don't want to turn them off and either.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to be open, and you don't want to push them away, so to speak.
Yeah.
I love that how you handle that. I guess my question going off of that is, how do you handle it when you have maybe a child that maybe comes from a certain background where they're really questioning, they're not sure whether they believe or not, and how do you handle that? Does that make it more difficult to talk about?
And like I said, I mean, I'm sort of offering the belief set that that we have as a school and as a Judaics department, but I'm not making it mandatory. So I listen. Actually, I really just did have a circumstance like this recently with some middle school students, and I said, you're the oldest you've ever been, and I understand that completely. I said, but I'm telling you right now, you are under no obligation to make a final decision about your outlook of life right now, 11, 10, however old you are. And I said, just keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. Take the beauty that's in the Torah. Take the beauty that's in the celebrations of the holidays and Shabbat. See how you can connect to that. And just keep your mind open. Right now, you might feel like this doesn't apply to you and this isn't something that makes sense to you. But learn as much as you can right now. And I'm telling you, one day you're going to be a little older than 11, and you'll be in a position where you can make decisions about how you're going to approach your life and approach your Judaism. So that seemed to make a little more sense to them. They weren't being told, this is the only way to look at things. This is the only belief that is available. If you're going to be in this school, you better, step right into it and follow the leader. They were given a little more ownership of the process. But at the same time, that means that they don't necessarily have to spend their entire Chumash class saying, that's not true, and there's no God, and I don't get that a lot, because we start them pretty young, and because most of the families do have at least some amount of a background of believing in God and believing in Judaism, even if they don't necessarily, practice. But at least this gives kids like that a little bit of leeway to listen and to learn and to know that they have some time before they have to make any final decisions about that.
So, Joanna, when you say education, is that, do you think of that as like chinuch in Hebrew? And if so, could you explain that, or do you define education differently?
You mean in what they're experiencing in Judaics classes and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's all chinuch, really, and the environment that we create at the school is really very enveloping in general. We try to have, a real spirit throughout the school, excitement over an upcoming holiday, or, excitement over Shabbat, excitement over reaching certain milestones in their learning. So there's sort of that chinuch, the chinuch sort of comes in throughout the day, and the specific classes, when I say education in terms of this topic, we would be mostly talking even almost exclusively Judaics classes and Judaics and Hebrew, because our Hebrew classes are very much, language skill acquisition. Our teachers sometimes, throw in, activities for a holiday or something like that. But it's really in the Judaics classes where these more difficult questions are discussed, and these questions of how God is part of our lives, and the history of these stories and Torah and all of that. So I want the students to stay open to it, just absorb what you can now. And of course, our hope is that they will leave as incredibly proud, knowledgeable Jews for whom Judaism is the focus point of their lives. But everybody's different, and everybody goes on their own path. So having this knowledge from this Judaics education is just an important thing for them to either use as the forefront of how they're living their lives, or to keep in their back pockets if it becomes something that they need to access.
Got it. So what's the biggest challenge that you faced as an educator?
Or as a Judaics director.
I'm sorry?
Or as Judaics director.
Or as Judaics director. I have a feeling that if these are your basic questions, you're getting the exact same answer from everyone right now. There really hasn't been a time where this could be an easier question. Obviously, this current pandemic has risen head and shoulders above any hiccup we've had before.
Wow.
From challenging teacher-parent interactions to, at-risk children, all that still exists. But we really had to recreate the school experience for this. The switch to remote learning last spring, I have to say we've tried to be very, very positive about it, but in a lot of ways it was nearly impossible for everyone, for teachers, for administrators, parents, students. But our school persevered. It was incredible, and we're very proud that we offered an impressive schedule of online classes every day, while the school districts around us barely had a handful of synchronous classes a week. I've never been prouder of working at a Jewish school, and for my decision all those years ago to teach here and not in a public school, because we just all came together and almost really made the impossible possible. The summer was a continual exercise in trying to compile the safest, most practical plan to bring the students and teachers back into the classroom. And thank God, so far, our hard work has paid off. I'm grateful to say we've been offering face-to-face, 5-day-a-week instruction uninterrupted since the last week of August. Our students and teachers wear their masks all day. They stay socially distanced. Our school is routinely disinfected throughout the day, deep cleaned at night. And then simultaneously, we still offer a full distance learning program for any families more comfortable with keeping their students at home, and a hybrid program for students to attend in person Monday through Thursday, and then use our Learn Anywhere program on Fridays. Our at-home students log into our school classes for the same synchronous instruction their peers are receiving. It's been a lot of work, and it really, just challenge doesn't even fit it, but we're very, very proud of what we've accomplished. And we just pray every day that we continue to do this safely.
Are all of them wearing masks all day?
Every single one of them. Kids are so adaptable and resilient. And I'll tell you, they are so happy to just be back in the same room as their friends. They are so happy to be out of the house. I think in March when everything shut down, I think most kids were like, oh my gosh, I don't have to get up for school tomorrow morning. I don't have to get dressed. I don't have to, and there was a little bit of that excitement for a little while, but it didn't last long. I mean, these kids really thrive to be with each other, with their teachers. And they really, we had the benefit of the fact that some kids attended our local day camp. We have a JCC day camp that went on through the summer. So some of the kids had already adjusted to wearing masks all day, and then others were just sort of used to it from grocery shopping trips and whatever else. It took a little trial and error. Some kids had to try out a few different masks to see what was the most comfortable for them and what would stay on and not slip down their faces. But it was, I really think it's a small price to pay for them to, and you really, I mean, it's true what they say, you really do get used to just about anything. I was a little nervous about whether I'd be able to pull off, 10 hours or so with a mask on. And, you do what you have to do and you get used to it. So the kids have been absolute troopers. They really have.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, how much longer do you think this will be going on with the masks and all these protocols and whatnot?
I would say that it's going to be at least until there's a vaccine that is widely available, honestly. Right. I mean, as I'm sure you know, our Pennsylvania numbers are going in the wrong direction, to heights that I didn't think we would see this quickly. And I really think that is, that I would imagine, I would be surprised if this wasn't certainly through the rest of the school year, if we're still in person, through June. Yeah. And once the vaccine is widely available, then maybe we'll start to look at putting things back to normal.
So given, obviously, this coronavirus challenge and some other challenges that we face as educators and directors, how do you stay motivated? I guess what motivates you to continue?
What really helps me is I go to our two extremes of age groups. I get to know every new pre-K class, and we sort of played around a little with the titles of our classes. Our pre-K for many, many, many years was most people's definition of pre-K, which was 4-year-olds turning 5. And we added a 3-year-old program to our school about 3 years ago. And we wanted them to be as much as part of our lower elementary and our early childhood program as the 4-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, the 6-year-olds. So we renamed the 4-year-olds becoming 5 pre-K plus, and our 3-year-olds are actually pre-K instead of preschool. Just that's something that was decided. So I get to know each new class of 3-year-olds that come in, and at the same time I keep track of our graduates. So by bringing both the start and the end of the JDS experience close to my heart, I know what my colleagues and I are doing is so important. I love meeting our youngest learners. I revel in their sweetness, and I know the adventures that are laying ahead of them. And then when I see our graduates go on to success, I'm really buoyed to keep working to help our current students reach their full potentials. It helps a lot.
I just have a question. Are the 3 and 4-year-olds, are they in separate classes or are they together?
Yeah, so 3-year-olds are separate. 3-year-olds are separate. So we basically have a small little group of 3-year-olds. They're mostly young 3-year-olds. And as anyone who's worked with early childhood before knows, that there's a There's a vast difference between a newly 3 and a professional 3 about to turn 4. It's a huge jump in developmental stages. And then that what we call pre-K plus, they're mostly 4. They usually turn 5 during the school year. And that is a somewhat more academic program and with a lot of reading readiness. We do a lot of, letters and numbers and things like that with the 3-year-olds too, but it's all developmentally appropriate. So, but yeah, that is a separate program.
And they're both full day, Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock to 3:30. We every now and then we get a family that says, really? My gosh, because not that long ago, 3-year-old programs would be, 9 to 1 or something like that. But you'd be amazed. I mean, the kids, the day flies by. The current situation is that most families are dual working parents who need certainly at least care to 3:30, if not longer than that. And it really, it does work out. But yeah, we chunk the day. We just make sure that the kids are, not worn out too badly. 3-year-olds do get a nice nap in the afternoon. Okay. And yeah, the day goes by.
Wow. What advice would you give to educators who are just beginning their journey?
So as it happens, I'm living with one.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It works out very nicely. My son, Yitzi, is studying at Kutztown University to be a K through 4th grade teacher.
Wow.
Yeah, he got the bug, I guess.
He must admire you.
Well, that's sweet. I just keep saying, I mean, listen, I always loved what I do, but it's not the easiest job in the world. And I just was amazed to think that he would see me come home every day and sometimes discuss some of the challenges and he's just been immersed in this his whole life, and yet he still chose it. So I'm very proud of him. But yeah, he's juggling both a full course load right now, and he's a supervisor at our JCC's J School program. Wow. J, not day, where the remote learners can go to attend their Zoom classes while their parents work. This is for the public school districts around us that have hybrid or all remote learning programs. And it's really nice, actually. They give him the opportunity to build his day around his remote classes. So his breaks and his lunchtime, he'll go into an office or a side room and take the class and then come right back into the J School classroom. So it's really a very excellent setup.
That's such a cool idea.
Yeah, the JCC was really the pioneer in this, in terms of getting the kids out of the house and safely, like I said, they did the daycare, they did the day school. Nope, try it again. They did the day camp over the summer. And we really watched to see, we certainly prayed that they'd be safe and everyone would be healthy. But we watched very carefully to see their protocols and their precautionary measures, and it really did inform a lot of what we did. And then they soldiered on. I mean, they also provide aftercare for our kids, for students whose family need care past 3:30. So anyway, that's what he's been doing, and I would tell new educators the same thing I've told Yitzi since he began as a camp counselor. I've always told him, your campers or your students, they aren't just a room full of kids who need to be managed. You're caring for other people's children. You have to remember that every minute of every day. Right. They're other people's babies, no matter how old they are. A parent has literally taken his or her heart and handed it over to you. And every student has individual needs and proclivities, and we do our best to meet them where they are and give them what they need. But our responsibility is huge. We shape lives, we impact families. Even the most casual comment can affect a student long term. I've had a couple of experiences with that, mostly positive. And despite this rather overwhelming perspective, poor Yitzi is still pursuing teaching. But I just think it's an important thing to keep in mind, and it's an easy thing to forget. You know, I taught before I was a parent, and I taught after I was a parent. And, you know, it's something that's obviously easier to understand if you have children of your own.
Right.
But it's just something that you have to keep in your mind all the time. These are other people's babies, and you have to just take such good care of them, even if they're in 8th grade. I've told the parents in my school during the back to school nights and things like that, I said, you know, when I was predominantly an early childhood teacher, I would tell the parents, I said, my main job here is to keep your children safe and happy, and they should feel loved. They should feel loved and safe and happy. Obviously, they need to learn, and they need to accomplish, and they need to, but I said, I said, there's no difference. 8th graders also need to feel safe and happy and loved. And that's our job. That's really the top of our job. All the rest will come. They'll learn. They'll progress. They'll accomplish as much as they personally, with everybody has learning differences, can accomplish. But we have to think of them as people. So I'm excited to watch a new generation of teachers enter the classroom. And I feel like they're more equipped than we ever were years ago to understand differentiated instruction and learning differences. And it's very encouraging. It's good.
For sure. And hopefully this podcast can help also encourage them with starting.
I hope so.
This is a bit of a challenging question. How do you think we can help our children or our students build a proper Torah foundation?
So this actually relates back a little bit to our discussion of trying to talk about God to our students. I think our best chance to instill a real love for Judaism and Torah learning is to make them as relatable as possible to the kids. We tell the Parsha stories over and over again to 3-year-olds and to 13-year-olds alike, but the stories have to be delivered in a context that each age can not only understand but appreciate. I always tell my students to try and imagine that they are in Avraham or Moshe or Rachel's shoes, or sandals for that matter. And I say, how must it have felt to experience their stories? How would you react in a similar situation? I'm currently Zooming our Shabbat party to pre-K through 3rd grade every week. We usually only used to do Shabbat parties through 1st grade, but because they were so popular during the shutdown, I would Zoom it from my dining room, and it was open to all ages. We did have to draw a line somewhere. 4th grade and up did not really have time in their schedules on Fridays to spend a half an hour at an online Shabbat party, but they still miss it, and they even miss the Parsha coloring packets that I use with the younger students. But what they might not realize is that their in-depth Chumash classes are more engaging and meaningful because of the love of these stories they've developed when they were little, and because of their connection to Shabbat and to Judaism. If students can connect to the Torah and to the history behind the holidays, if they can feel the relief that Shabbat can bring to a busy week, they're going to carry the Torah and Jewish pride with them far past their 8th grade graduation. And that's really what we're looking for. That's really what we want to see in the kids that leave our care.
For sure. Continuity, right? That's what we want to see.
But meeting them where they are, it's a very different conversation. Akedat Yitzchak, where Avraham had to, we were just doing this in the last few weeks, where Avraham was told to sacrifice his son. It is a very, very different conversation in a kindergarten class than it is in a 5th grade class. I always say that if the Torah was a movie, most parents wouldn't let their kids see it. Because there's a lot of very adult concepts in it. And, I figured out ways to make the stories a little bit more palatable to younger children, and at the same time to deliver more of the facts and more of the details, even when it involves violence and scary things, to the older kids, but at the same time still get in Abraham's head, get in Yitzchak's head, get in Sarah's head. And obviously these were people from a generation, from a level that we will never see in our lifetimes, but it still makes that connection for them. How is it that Abraham trusted and believed in God so strongly that he would be willing to sacrifice his incredibly beloved, incredibly waited for son? So there's a lot of drama. There's a lot that teenagers like to pull apart. But then you've made that connection, and then you've made you've allowed them to have that Torah foundation, which works as both a knowledge foundation. So, a lot of our kids go on to Jewish high schools. We don't want them, to pick up the Chumash upside down, or to say, who's Yaakov again. But at the same time, we want them to go forward in their future with the knowledge of our history as Jewish people.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think that successful Jewish education would look like in the future?
So, I think we need to continue adjusting our curricula and our teaching methods to best fit the needs of the students who will be entering our classrooms. And I think the huge takeaway of this pandemic is that technology is here to stay. Even before the pandemic, I was using online Judaics classes from Israel, because Judaic staffing in a small community is very, very challenging. And by the way, Allentown is a fantastic place to live. If anyone is hearing this who would like to live in a wonderful neighborhood and teach at a wonderful school, please let me know. But
we can pick you guys up if you're interested.
Yeah. But that was a solution. And it was something that, especially before the pandemic, was a little difficult for some parents to swallow, to say, wait a minute, no, we need a teacher in the room who's interacting with a student and getting to know them, not just somebody in a computer that, is so far away. And we did it anyway. We found incredible teachers who had the skill set. Online teaching is almost a completely separate skill set than classroom. It's an entirely different job. And the other thing that we've done recently is we currently paired with a Bat Sherut in Israel, a girl who's connecting with Jewish communities in America as her year of Army service. And she is working one-on-one with a few of our students on their Hebrew skills online. Our Hebrew language program has a major online component that the students navigate with ease and ownership. And this is something that a lot of our kids went into. So we actually had last year, starting in September, our 5th and 6th grade class began the year with a rabbi in Israel who was teaching them their Judaics classes. And by the time that March hit, they were the experts. They knew Zoom, they knew the etiquette, they knew the protocol. They were incredible. So that when the rest of their poor teachers in Allentown were desperately trying to figure out Google Meet and how to share the screen and how to chat and all of this, they were so comfortable with it already. And I really think that this is really going to be a big part of the future moving forward, because we've realized that there's no boundaries to education now. We're not limited by the staff that we have physically in our building anymore. The pandemic led to a need to provide a Chromebook for every student from 2nd grade and up. Before, there would be a few computers in each class to share. But now that so many of our children have their own devices, they're becoming accustomed to doing more intensive research, to using personalized programs that weren't available to them before. I really do expect the technology component of Jewish education to keep growing as we approach the future. Not only are our students learning the ins and outs of everything, and the ones that didn't have that class before had to learn Zoom and iTalam and Google Suite, but our teachers are learning it too. And a lot of our teachers, they really had extremely limited tech skills before last March, myself included. This was a learning curve like you wouldn't believe. But now there are just fewer boundaries to learning, and online classes can come from anywhere in the world, and families can be more involved than ever. But for all of technology's benefits, there is still a lot to be said for the face-to-face interaction, even through masks. So we take what has always worked, and we pair it with new ideas and resources. And I really think that that's what will be happening, even after the masks are off, even after the desks are back close together and kids can work, in groups and things like that. I think what we've all learned about what technology can provide in our classrooms will remain, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, we are too. We're excited to see how things will develop in the future.
Yes.
Joanna, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We really learned a lot from you. And
yeah,
my pleasure.
We're looking forward to going back and combing through and getting all those gems out of this one.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you again so much for having me, and best of luck in everything.
Well, hopefully we'll have to have you back for a follow-up episode.
That would be wonderful.
Post-pandemic, we'll revisit.
Yes, on the other side. That would be great.
All right, well, thank you so much for everything you do, and stay safe out there, and wishing you all the best, and we'll talk to you soon.
Very good. You too. Take care. So long.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.